We're going to have 1 minute per poster presenter. And after that, we will do the report back and the large group discussion. Can we see the first poster, please? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen. I'm a first-year PhD student here at Stanford. You heard a lot about autoencoders before, so I'll just quickly jump to the small details on where we applied it. So this is X-ray astronomy. We're looking for X-ray transients. X-ray data is in form of event files where you have access to the data of like each photon and the energy of each photon. The second step is basically to build a nice representation of the data where you bin along the energy and the time. So those are the ET maps. Then you use an autoencoder, and the special thing we did is to enforce sparsity in the latent space. And then when you visualize the latent space, you can see that known dips cluster in specific clusters in the latent space, and known flares cluster in specific clusters. And then you can basically use the embedding space to find similar events by similarity searches, and also use it for anomaly detection. And that's how we build an entire catalog of new transients, dips, and flares. And we found a very new, interesting transient as well that you can check out in the paper, I think, up there. I think that's it, yeah. Thank you.
So I've been developing time series analysis methods to try to capture information that's not captured by autocorrelation functions and power spectra. I was surprised to learn, well, it's commonly assumed that anything not captured by these second-order statistics can be studied with multi-point correlation functions. And I was surprised to learn in a very interesting paper by Crutchfield and company that that's not really true mathematically, that there are simple Markov processes that are white to all orders of multi-point correlation functions. Anyway, methods extending, for example, the autocorrelation to measure autodependence, which is a stronger statistical quantity, have had some success at getting information about the logistic map, which the famous or infamous chaotic map. Ordinary autocorrelations reveal it as just white noise, but the auto-dependence can extract some structure. And my main interest is actually in making autoregressive models of time series. And it turns out that these dependence metrics are very useful in capturing the arrow of time and extending the ordinary autoregressive modeling techniques. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Rajarshi. I'm a fourth-year PhD student at University of New Mexico and a Reber Fellow at NRAO. So the stuff that I did was to identify rare massive stars that are Wolf-Rayet stars, which is found in high-mass star-forming regions, and also progenitors for supernova. So we try to distinguish, we applied a supervised machine learning model to distinguish between other types of stars, evolved stars and Wolf-Rayet stars, and our model performed decently well, and we found a lot of these stars in the local arm using the Gaia parallaxes for this new candidate Wolf-Rayet stars. So we think that our model did well, and it can be used. Our model can be used to detect anomalies or rare stellar types. And if you're interested, I have a poster out there. I'm interested to talk to you, and I also have a QR code for our published paper. So yeah, thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Maria Elena Monzani. I'm a lead scientist at SLAC. I'm going to take a break from talking about optical astronomy and talk for a second about direct detection of dark matter. We have a direct detection instrument for dark matter, which is a bucket of liquid xenon. This is under a mountain in South Dakota. We haven't found dark matter yet, and the polite way to say it is we have the world record sensitivity to the WIMP particle detection. We're writing a lot of data because the sensitivity of this type of search is at or near threshold. So we have about 3 petabytes per year of data that we write to disk, and then we have to look at it. This poses a number of problems. One is bookkeeping and storing the data and getting it back and knowing where it is. And Eli, in two slides, is going to tell us about metadata discovery, which we use for that. We're also having issues retrieving information because we have a 250-person team with a 20-30% turnover every year, and so we have a lot of people asking the same question. So we're building agents to, answer the recurring questions. No poster on that yet. And then dark matter is extremely elusive. We're expecting a handful of events if we're lucky. So it's a 10 to the minus 9 rarity problem. And, we have a lot of techniques to look for that. We have 2 examples coming up right after me. One is, for example, you can use anomaly detection for particle identification, and Maris is going to tell you about one of our unsupervised learning techniques. Or you can do the other way around. You can say, well, we have a very large data set. Can we use it to advance machine learning methods? And John is about to tell you about, some density ablation clustering work that he's done with in this context. And I'll keep it moving.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maurice. I'm a postdoc in Maria Elena's group. And like Maria Elena mentioned, in LZ, we have tons of data. This data is effectively waveforms that we collect by our PMTs. And now we want to understand this data. So to work with it, we first do some reconstruction. So we don't really work with the waveforms. We process it and then make it slightly lighter so analyzers could work with. And this thing lives in a very high dimension. Well, not very high, but it lives in like a few dozen dimensional space. And an interesting thing to understand is the structure of that data in higher dimensional space and understand if we can find anomalies there. And like Maria Elena mentioned, it could be science data, simulation, calibrations. It comes in many flavors. So what we do is we take the reconstructed data in high dimensional space and we use some nonlinear dimensional reduction algorithms to map it in 2D, which is what you're seeing there in the left side. And if you do this, you're seeing main population in the lower dimensional embedding and then some clusters. And this is kind of like the group anomalies that were mentioned before. And trying to understand each of these things and the features that distinguish them, you can tell about the performance of our reconstruction algorithm, pathologies and simulation, and issues with the detector like pathologies in the data and identify the causes for those things. Alternatively, what you could do is do dimensional reduction with the waveforms. And S2 waveforms is one of the signals that we get, and they're very interesting to encode a lot of physics. And if you do that by doing Fourier sampling, Fourier decomposition, then subsampling, and then again doing dimensional reduction with a nonlinear method like UMAP, you seem to be able to find one of our problematic backgrounds, which we're calling accidentals, that sort of pair these isolated population of waveforms that should be together, but they're somehow isolated. And it seems like this method is doing really good at capturing those isolated population of S1s and S2s, which is what you're seeing in the cluster, that's disconnected from the main data, where the green is the science data that we had in one of our science runs. So yeah, thank you for listening.
Yeah, hi guys. So I'm John. I'm a PhD in Stanford ICME. And yeah, basically this work is on a density clustering algorithm that we've been working on. So oftentimes when you're working with density-based algorithms, they'll do really well at clustering high density points and like adjacent regions which are low density, but maybe still containing these, for example, WIMP search particles that we're interested in. They won't be clustered here, and other algorithms are not very good at scaling well. And so this algorithm seeks to basically combine the strengths of density-based methods with spectral methods, which are another class of clustering algorithms. And so it basically works by iteratively applying these two algorithms together, and then removing clusters once they're detected. And with the partitioning of this, with this partitioning that we get from our algorithm, we can convert this into a graph and do all sorts of analyses, such as balancing precision and recall of these localized, I guess, groupings of events that have features that we're interested in. So yeah, happy to discuss the details more during my poster session. Thanks.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Eli Mizrachi. I use they or she pronouns. I'm a postdoc at Slack in Kaipak. Something we all probably have in common is that we interface with databases to build our data sets, and ELSI is no exception. We have metadata related to detector conditions and data processing, which are stored in 6 different databases. And we happen to have 5 different interfaces which connect to various subsets of those databases, some of those graphically and some programmatically. This poses a challenge for people like grad students. Again, Marielena mentioned we have high turnover, who want to know what data is available and under what conditions it was taken. And for instance, what conditions are we even tracking? It's also difficult for us to maintain these different interfaces, let alone develop them further to add features for that our users need. And what I've sought out to do is to expend effort on deployment instead of development by using Helm to deploy 2 open source applications that unify how we interact with our databases. The first one is Trino, which is a scalable and parallel distributed SQL query engine, which happens to also work with NoSQL databases, which is pretty cool. And the second one is Superset, which is a very powerful dashboarding application which connects to Trino that could let any of our users interrogate our databases with a vastly reduced cognitive overhead. So I'm really hopeful that this is going to produce a lot of improvements basically for our user experience. That's basically it. So if you have questions for me and maybe the phrase data engineering sparks an interest in you, come talk to me and ask me about my poster.
Sorry for the hiccup. We will make sure that all the poster presenters will present their poster. Let's thank all the poster presenters. Okay. And the final thing that we're going to do before our lunch and poster break is to report back from the discussion we had before. So we went through the generalized hat and identified a couple of points that we think could be useful to discuss in the full forum. So I'm going to read the discussion point, call the number of table, and then somebody from this table, please come and expand upon the point that you mentioned, okay? So this is from table 11. So there are 2 questions. Should we have domain knowledge in the algorithm design? And what is the balance between pure ML and domain knowledge? And how do we bridge this gap? So table 11, we look for a representative.
Yeah, so I'm taking, okay. So we discussed a lot with about based on the talks we heard, especially Josh at the end, about, so we are a very diverse crowd here. So there were a couple of astronomers, but all the others come from different domains. And so they were pretty worried about the fact that discovering that most of the anomalies that we discover in astronomy are in fact uninteresting and boring. And so how to bridge this gap and how to find interesting anomalies was the discussion. And how to include this domain knowledge not after the loop, when you first run your algorithm and then you ask someone, an astronomer, oh, this is interesting or not, but have this domain knowledge incorporated before and trying to build the algorithms so that they are designed for that particular kind of application. We didn't really, figured out how to do this because also these are lots of complexities involved, but was one of the topics of discussion. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. I remind everyone that we have a half-day unconference tomorrow to solve exactly these kinds of questions. So I'm looking at this table, and tomorrow I will come and ask how you figured this out. Yes. Okay, next one is table 13. Reporting the anomalies that turned out to be not so interesting. Such anomalies may be stored in a database along with their characterization so that newly detected anomalies can be cross-checked with that. Table 13.
We're the only two left at this table. So, yeah, this is a question posed by the visitors from Institution of Statistics from India. I think it's actually coupled with the other table question, right? So basically, all the uninteresting one, we'll call it failures, is a way to store them in a database, in a structure that later on you can learn from the failure, so that so they related that from their background of biology that they have these mistakes, but they keep it and then refer back. I think that's stretch my knowledge.
Thank you very much. Okay, table 12. They raised the question about whether we want to be mindful about the resources we spend on problems that we can solve without them, thinking about cost, environmental impact, etc. Table 12.
We were talking a lot about sort of integrating processes further upstream in your data processing pipeline to get rid of systematic effects and things that cause these uninteresting anomaly detections, and wondering about striking some kind of balance between, throwing resources at a problem that in principle we could maybe use our human brains to solve if we think more closely about detector systematics and things like that, and whether there's a way to think about sort of the overall impact of using tons of resources to do something that we could probably figure out if we decided it was an interesting enough problem. So.
Okay, thank you. Table 7, how do we remain open to interesting anomalies like pulsars or quasars without getting swamped by false positives in high-dimensional datasets?
I guess that was me attempting to sort of summarize our discussions. I'm sort of aware of the role of serendipity in things like the discovery of pulsars. The fact that Jocelyn Bell printed out her strip charts and looked at them was really kind of key there. And in these regimes where we're talking about sort of pushing the algorithms further upstream and dealing with the raw sensor data, will they have the sort of imagination to see those kind of things? If you fed in the LIGO data into such an algorithm, would it figure out that there are chirps in there, or would it just get sort of overwhelmed by false positives? So we're sort of, I guess, related to some of the other discussions at other tables, curious as to how you separate out the instrumental effects from the things that are truly interesting.
Thank you. Table 6, is there overlap in medical imaging anomaly detection that could be applied here?
Yes, we were speaking. There was actually two folks from NVIDIA that were at our table, and they were mentioning that they were also working with some of the medical imaging folks here at Stanford. And we were talking about the fact that there's time series data that we have, but it's not as rich as maybe other sources of previous past time series sets used in industry or other applications. And so they brought up that the medical imaging also has small samples of time series data, and they also have to cope with detecting anomalies in it. So we were wondering if there might be some overlap in the domain, and if there would be ability to maybe cross-pollinate or understand what kinds of solutions they're already working on. And they also have a real desire not to have false negatives in their domain, which maybe, I don't know if it's different if we're more looking into false positive avoidance. But we thought it might be fruitful, and if the two NVIDIA folks here, if they can maybe bridge those connections, because it sounded like they had, working on the Marlowe project, a lot of insight in what was going on in there, and maybe they can build some bridges for us.
Okay, sorry. In the last 10 minutes before we're going to lunch, I'm opening the mic to anyone who wants to say something about one of these discussion points, or more in general about what we talked about in this conference. Juniors are highly encouraged to speak up.
So there's been a lot of talk about looking for interesting anomalies. I'm, as a teacher and a AAVS, like American Association of Variable Star Observers person, interested in the boring anomalies. I want boring anomalies for my students to study that are manageable, like single target kind of things. So I'm looking for your haystack. And I would love to think about ways to funnel some of those kind of less sort of groundbreaking, but more manageable as a student or citizen science project sorts of anomalies into organizations that would hungrily and enthusiastically follow up on them.
This is an amazing event. I was the one that asked the question of Phil this morning about clarifying the nature of the pilot data that's coming out. And one of the reasons I asked the questions, I think, is that like the world I live in is sort of the world of causal inference. I think you'll be hearing a little bit more this afternoon from these kind of other researchers that come from similar domains. And I think one of the sort of meta themes that's interesting is how you evaluate different methods against each other. So when the initial data comes out on June 30th, you know, start playing with different things we think we would do with 10 years of data. And sort of the world we live in is one where we ask, you know, if you design 2 different algorithms for detecting interesting phenomena in this data, what statistical signatures do you look for to declare that one of those algorithms is better than another? So I'm not going to talk at all about like how one would think about that problem, but I think as a matter of debate, it's sort of interesting, I think, to use the context that you're all working in to also think about those kind of what I think are basically very fundamental statistical sort of policy evaluation questions. It's a community, I think, that doesn't have this space of questions on their radar screen broadly, but listening to what I heard, you know, of course, as a non-expert, it feels like a potentially very fertile opportunity for intersection. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I just want to take a quick vote to see, based on what we heard today, experts and non-experts, and what do you think would be the driver of the first weird or discovery from LSST? Would be human-based or ML-based? And so who thinks is going to be astronomers looking at the data and pure domain finding the most interesting thing? Okay. And who thinks ML? So humans still win.
So by virtue of my position, I get to watch some of the humans on the Rubin staff looking at the commissioning data. And indeed, they're the ones, you know, looking at the visualizations that are made, looking at the images and starting to spot interesting things. And so that's why I put my hand up for the humans. But I get the sense that it's really just because we haven't got that far along enough in the observatory to have the AI tooling to do the job that we've been talking about this morning. So maybe things will be different when we come to look at, you know, year 5 or year 8 or something.
There's a third option. Both of them combined. Right, so there's a question whether a human actually gets to see anything that hasn't been touched by a machine learning algorithm first. And I think in Rubin, that is an interesting question, whether kind of how low level will the humans reach. Right now, they go all the way down, but there will be kind of layers of abstraction on top of it. And so I don't think the dichotomy is particularly helpful.
Okay. We're going to post all of these discussion questions, both those that we touched upon today and all the rest tomorrow in the unconference. So you could get new and fresh ideas about things to try and do in the unconference. Thank you all the session participants. And you can go to lunch and posters and come back at 2.